which is review and discussion of utility meters and meter reading.
Awesome.
It's like they're
Who's leading
favoring
this one off?
I think I'm going to start. Several weeks ago, we had some discussion about meter reading for our electric and our water utilities, and there was some discussion about some of the possibilities in the future for reading. So tonight we want to take some time and talk about what we're currently doing as far as meter reading for our water and electric systems, and then talk about some of the possibilities that are out there. We've been exploring some different scenarios over the last several months. So with that, we've asked Ryan, our IS manager, to take about 10 minutes or so and talk about our current status with meter reading. And then we want to turn the time over to Jim and Kevin to talk about some of the other options out there.
Trying to balance out the other half of the
Oh,
diet.
sorry, that's my fault. Apologize. So sorry.
Good enough? Okay, good.
I know how it is. It's good.
She has her favorites. It's all right.
I might have to go get another computer or something. I don't know what's wrong.
Oh, no.
I don't feel so dumb.
Supposed to be fine for you, wasn't it? All right, let me just give me a second.
Yeah.
I'll go get another
Yeah.
projector.
Hey, you're all right.
Anything else we want to address or talk about?
So, I guess I'll raise something. We're supposed to get another storm in tonight, and maybe a little bit of wind. Fun, huh?
Luckily, southerly ones.
So, yeah, I don't think they're supposed to get above 45 or something like that. So, 45 degree, 45 miles an hour.
My trees are all leaning like this. That might help.
That might push them back.
It's a positive.
This is my batting cage.
We're not anticipating any trouble, I take it, tonight.
So southerly winds.
Southerly winds.
Yeah, and then you knocked out the projector.
Yep. First victim of the southerly winds right there.
The only problem when you only have one item on the agenda is you can't really move to anything else. Unless we go to number 3, adjournment, but that might be a little, can't do that yet, right?
right, so we're here to discuss the meter reading and meter data. I just kind of want to give you an overview of our current water system. Currently, there's 8,338 water meters total in our system, and 4,642 meters are read by hand. 296 are read with a master meter, and 1,600 roughly are read with Neptune. So this is what it looks like on the ground. There's in blue is our Neptune meters, and in green is our master meters. You can see that there's kind of a tan color, and those are the hand-read meters. So when we go back, you can see there's 4,642 of those hand-read meters.
Are we talking about water too?
We're talking about water right now, yeah. So these are water meters in the city. Each one of these blocks you see, 23, 25, 22, those are the meter books. So that's how they read those meters in those areas. So I had the privilege of going out with Jared and from the water department, and he took me out around, and we read meters for a day. The master meters were very, very slow, so it's a slow go. Each book took, what was it, about 2 hours a book for the master meters, and we read book 1, 2, and 3, which is right there and there and there, and it took us like a half hour, so it was really super fast. And anyway, so that's our current status. The hand read meters, they go around to each meter that we saw previously. So each one of those meters in tan, and they handwrite every meter. So to kind of give you an example of what kind of work that is, this stack of papers right here is 1 month worth of work. It's all the logs and all the data they collect on those meters throughout the month. So it's a gigantic amount of paperwork. So here's the master meter reader. They connect it to their truck, and it has an antenna on it, and they drive around, and they almost have to stop in front of each meter to read those meters. The Neptune meters are similar. They're read off a computer with an antenna connected to the truck. I didn't take a picture of that. But this is, you can see up here in this corner, the top right corner, this is a Neptune meter. This is the actual antenna of the meter. And this right here is a master meter, and that's in, am I right? Is that a master? Yeah, that's a master meter, and that's in a vault. So the antenna on the Neptune meters is on top of the lid. The master meter is buried inside the vault. And quite oftentimes, this was just, I wasn't with him more than a half hour. I was with him a half a day this day, and we ran into this one when we were electronically reading meters. So you can see that this is a problem. You can't even see into the vault.
Can I ask a quick question? When it snows, can you still read from those meters with the antennas like that, or do they get covered up and you can't read them?
So these meters you would be able to read from even if there was snow. Yeah. On the ground.
Okay, so it does work through.
Yeah.
You
We
don't.
don't read in the winter months right
Okay.
now. Yeah. So maybe you could do the same thing with the master meters, but it would probably be a lot more difficult. It would take more time. So, and then obviously the hand read meters would be nearly impossible. You wouldn't be able to do that. I wasn't going to say anything about it, but the time that it takes to read the hand meters is about 2 weeks of solid labor. So it's an incredible amount of time. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of pieces of software that we use to read meters. There's the Neptune Insight, which is for the water, for the Neptune meters, and it has its own intricacies and things like that. It's the software they use to export out the data from Kaysville into the Neptune meter system and then import it back in again once they've made the reads, right? So master meter has a very similar thing, but it's totally different. And so does the power department. They have the same kind of utility. They export out whatever they need for the power into the data collectors, and then they bring it back into the software. So there's those 4 pieces of software. Kaysville, which is our billing software. So this is kind of a snapshot of each one of the pieces of software. This is Neptune. This is master meter. This is the MVRS, and this is the MVRS, and this is Kaysville. So it's a lot of work to try to figure out and keep track of each of these different pieces of software to bring in that data so that we can bill our customers. We have similar issues in the power department. So now we're switching to the power meters. Inside the power department, we have 9,553 power meters. So 735 of those are commercial meters read by hand. So each one of those commercials are read individually by hand. What they do is they go around and they enter it into the data collector. So the residential readers, though, are drive-by. And when I was talking to Jeff, he said that as they go around reading these meters, he'll try to read the people that are on the first of the month, and the people that are on the 21st of the month. And so it's really hard to quantify how much time he's spending just driving around reading meters, because we're trying to, read them on the same time of month in order to make the billing work out right. So that's what we have there. This is a picture of the meters in the power system. So you can see obviously it overlaps with the water department. And in blue, we have the commercial meters, and this isn't exactly complete, but it's mostly complete. And then green for the residential meters. So this is the data collector they use for the power department. It's the same data collector whether they're reading, or the drive-by read, or they're hand entering in the data for the commercial meters. So you can see here, this is Blaine Jensen RV, and they're entering in the meter reading for that month. But there's more information that they have to enter. Demand and what else? Okay, yeah. So they have to read the demand, and then they have to reset the demand. So basically, it's cutting off the little lock and pushing it in, and then putting another lock on it so they can do that. So they have to do that every single time, and it's really time consuming. So I just kind of wanted to give you a picture of kind of where we're at and how we read meters and the time that it takes to read those meters. Obviously, this is the library meter, the new library meter, and this is on Tana Acres. And you can see each one of these meters are ERT meters, but they're electronically read, but there's dial meters, and then there's this digital meters, new digital meters. So there's a variety of things out there in the field right now. Some of them are really old. So that's all I had. And what I'd like to do is turn the time over to Kevin and Jim. Kevin and Jim are both from Landison Gear, Hamilton Associates. And they gave us a presentation about, I'd say 3 or 4 months ago. Yes. Yeah, and we were really impressed. But their focus is power. They can also service water. But what we're trying to do is give you an idea of what an AMI system does. So AMI is an advanced meter infrastructure. And that's what we're trying to give you an idea of what an advanced meter infrastructure can do. So I'll turn the time over to them.
Hi, I'm Kevin Pataki with Hamilton Associates, and I'll give $1 to anyone who can spell my name. No, just joking. I'm married. I'm not allowed to have cash. Anyhow, I've put together a book here with some brochures. Jim is going to go over a short presentation here, but we're working with lots of utilities here in Utah. We do have quite a few customers. Some of them are the power line carrier customers, such as Dixie Escalante and Garcane down in the southern part of the state. We do have some previous customers, TS1 customers, old power line carrier transitioning to RF. We do have new power line carriers, and then we do have a couple RF customers that are coming online. So there are people out here that you can talk to. We also have a bunch of reference accounts in here that you can call on, figure out how they, or ask them how they feel about their systems. But what this has done for most of the utilities, if not all of them, is it's taken them out of a reactive phase where, no, we found some CTs that are in backward. These people have been getting billed wrong for the last 25 years, into a proactive where all the reads, you're getting 99.95% of all your reads in, daily reads in. You're able to detect all your outages. There's also a whole suite of other tools available to you, should you choose to, that'll pretty much give you constant health. I've put a book together here with some brochures. I've got my card on the front. Everybody knows how to find me. I'm almost an honorary Utah citizen. And I also included some studies, a few studies on RF to go over its safety. And I'll just bring this up and set it on the counter for you. And with that, I'll turn over to Jim Richardson.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to leave you hanging there.
Good evening. Jim Richardson. I feel like I'm a Utah resident. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, so it's nice to be back, spend some time in the great state. I really miss the mountains. So the title of the presentation is really Benefits of Grid Automation, because today's AMI networks, AMI systems are more than just reading meters. It's going to help your utility and your city prepare yourself for the future with some advanced capabilities that I'll walk through and show you what you could do with the system. The agenda, we're going to talk about some evolving industry challenges that utilities are facing, why mesh RF communication systems and how they work. Talk about more than just meter reading, talk about some of the advanced applications that really make meter reading almost a secondary issue. It's preparing your utility for some future applications. Do you want to spend, we've got 2 slides on smart meter facts and consumer safety, because it's always brought up whenever you embark on some kind of automation, so we want to go ahead and address that up front. Save some time for questions. If you have any questions as I go through, please feel free to stop me. Be happy to address those. So the electrical industry, and really that's the primary discussion points is for the electric industry, mostly, but a little bit on the water side, but there's many challenges. Grid reliability and power quality has become a big issue for utilities. Operational efficiency and asset utilization. The infrastructure is aging. So it's important to be able to monitor those assets out in the field and get better operational efficiency out of those existing assets. Distributed energy resources, or your solar PV that you've got some consumers putting in, that brings its own operational challenges to utilities. You probably haven't seen it yet because you don't have much of it, but I live in California, and on my street, we've got between 35 and 40% of the homes in that subdivision have solar PV on the roof. So it's causing all sorts of industry challenges for PG&E. And so an automatic meter reading infrastructure system can help the utility gather that information they need to better operate their network. Capacity constraints. So you may have capacity constraints on certain circuits. You may have an area of growth in your city that is growing faster than your infrastructure can handle. We've got some tools that can help you defray some of those substation upgrades, perhaps. Finally, customer service. Customers want to be more engaged now. They want to know how they're utilizing energy, and they want to know the environmental effects of their usage. So our systems provide that data and the information that can help that consumer make better energy decisions for themselves. It also gives that your utility information to quicker restore power outages for a storm response. So we'll have literally the meter can tell you what's going out, and then as you go into a neighborhood and start restoring, the meter comes up and tells you where you've restored so you don't have to go back to a certain location. So lots of operational efficiencies being gained from an AMI system. So these are just a few of the evolving industry challenges. Really didn't touch much on water, but living in California with the drought situation we've had, utilities want to be able to provide more information to their consumers on how they're utilizing water. And some of the capabilities with an AMI network, we can help monitor the usage of that water better and more accurately to be able to give you real-time information from that water usage. So why RF communication systems? First of all, it's relatively quick and easy to install. We did an initial study of your RF infrastructure, and literally it only will take 2 routers, 2 football-sized devices up on your pole tops to read all of your meters in your city. Very quick and easy to install. Once you have that RF backbone installed, when you plug in a meter, it literally finds itself. It's a self-forming, self-healing, resilient mesh network. So it knows where it's talking to, and if you lose a node on that network, it has an Electron Earth system you've deployed was a great meter reading tool. In fact, I actually sold the first commercial Earth system back in 1992 to Boston Edison. Great meter reading tool, but it's a one-way device. It uses bubble-up technology, so it sends its signal up, every few seconds, so you can read it drive-by. A two-way network system has the capability to give you much more information from that meter. Today's electronic meters, we can give you voltage, current. We can even measure the temperature in the meter socket. We've been able to determine problems on an electric circuit where a consumer may have had a socket that was bad. So we're able to bring back much more information from a solid state meter and communicate two-way for that. So now your customer service reps, when they get a call from a consumer, they can literally go out, read that meter as they've got the customer on the phone. Gives you real-time alarms and events, those outage detection and restoration events. Again, we'll talk about some multi-purpose capabilities. Beyond AMI, we'll talk about some distribution automation capabilities, some load control capabilities, and some consumer enhancements. Proven, low-risk technology. We've got over 200 customers in the United States that have deployed this, over 50 million endpoints in the US with this technology. Bandwidth, speed, and capacity is always a big important point. We developed this network, this AMI network, initially about 15, 20 years ago as a distribution automation network. So speed and the amount of data you bring back is very important. So as we deploy this RF mesh network for meter reading, it has the bandwidth and the speed to be able to do much more for your system as you grow. And finally, standards-based. We're future-ready, so we monitor all the new standards that are coming out to make sure we adhere to those new standards.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
Do you rate the bandwidth, speed, and capacity? Is there a standard, like it does 3 megabytes up and down or something?
300 kilobits per second.
Okay.
is the data flow. So it's very dependent. In fact, I'll show you as we do this hopping sequence. So let me show you, let me build this network. So we're going to start from the right. And so on the right is what we call our wide area network. Those are our access points to get the data back into the utility. Each one of these collectors can handle about 25,000 meters. For a system your side, one would be plenty, but we would probably install 2 of those collectors on your system for redundancy. In the middle is the field area network. Those are those pole top routers. There's about a dozen of those routers we would deploy throughout your service territory. You can either put them on a pole, a street light, the higher the better, but we would put about 12 of those out there. Those, along with the meters, form that RF mesh network. So a meter would talk to its neighbor's meter, would talk to its neighbor's meter, would talk to the water meter, and then get that information back up to the router and bring that information back. Then further down the network is the home area network. So now that we've got that communication, that infrastructure in place, we can deploy devices in the consumer's home if that's what you choose, whether that's smart thermostat, whether it's a direct load control device so we can help control the usage of either a hot water heater or an air conditioner or a pool pump. If you had a power issue that you wanted to control your peak load usage, we've got some tools that we can put in the consumer's home to be able to do that. So 3 portions: the wide area network, the local field area network, and then the home area network. Here's the data pieces, and I'll send this presentation to you so you've got it. So we utilize 902 to 928 frequency bandwidth. It's an unlicensed bandwidth. We hop between those frequencies, so we never have any interference with other devices like a garage door opener that may be operating that same frequency. We'll hop between frequencies to get that signal out. So talk about that self-forming, self-healing RF mesh network. I mentioned that we hop between meter and meter and then up to the router, and then the router communicates directly to that collector and gets that data back. So the meters constantly build a neighbor list. So when you install a meter at first, it'll start reaching out and find out what's my nearest neighbor that I can talk to. And it'll rate those neighbors. It'll say, oh, okay, this meter has got the strongest connectivity, so I'm going to talk to it. That's my primary route through that. If that device goes out, it knows there's an alternate path to get that data back. So it's a self-healing, multiple path, no single point of failure device. Intelligent routing scheme, so it's got minimal latency. So as you deploy these devices out in the field, it wants to limit the number of hops. It takes a couple seconds a hop for that. So fewer number of hops, the quicker the information gets back. Typically, if your customer service reps were to do an on-demand read, it takes maybe 10 or 15 seconds to bring that data back. And that's, if we host it, that reading would actually go into this device, send it all the way back to our network operations center in Lenexa, Kansas, and then back to you. Okay?
Just a quick question on if one of them goes out and it reroutes, does it notify you that one of them is out?
It does. Every morning, as your engineer comes into his office, he'll have a health statement of that network. And it'll tell him or her exactly what nodes, if there's any failures, if you've got a meter reading that hasn't communicated in the last 24 hours, it'll give you a complete list of those devices. Okay? And again, the data that we're able to bring back from the meter is so much more than just a meter reading. Like I said, we can make that a time of use meter, so we can determine buckets of when a consumer is utilizing that data. We can bring back load profile information and make that data all available to the consumer. So the consumer could go onto a web portal and actually see, oh, I see I used a lot of energy between 12 and 1. What was going on? Oh yeah, I was doing the wash. Well, that's the big energy use for that particular time. So again, it's a true multi-purpose mesh network. So it combines AMI, or meter reading. We can do demand supply response. We can do the smart thermostats, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We can do distribution automation capabilities. We really haven't talked about distribution automation, but as your utility gets your network smarter, you're going to want to have communications to those reclosers or those capacitor banks or those switches out in your network. So instead of manually, you're going to automate that process. We would literally embed that same radio we have in our meters into those distribution automation devices so you can have communication to those devices. A lot of your SCADA endpoints we would bring back through that system as well. And again, with no additional infrastructure. When we design our AMI network, we design it so there's about 12% of that network is being utilized. So we have 88% for future applications as you move forward. So grid management is a big key phrase in the utility industry. It's the energy future of the U.S. looks radically different from the past. You know, it used to be you'd have a generator feeding your transmission network, then the distribution network, and then the consumer, one-way flow of electrons, if you will. Now with the advancements of solar PV and distributed energy resources, you could have neighborhoods that have their own generation supply, but utilities would still need to provide that backup in generation. Let's move on to one of the big features of the AMI network. And although today I don't believe you're subject to a coincident demand charge from your wholesale power purchase, it's coming. Colorado just put that into place, and many states across the U.S. are putting coincident demand charges because 10 to 20% of the overall electricity cost in the U.S. comes from just 100 hours of usage during the year. So if you can reduce that usage for those 100 hours, you can reduce a significant amount of electricity costs that you're going to be paying and obviously passing along to your consumers. So if you're able to help them control their energy peaks, and that will lower your costs and hence lower their electricity costs as well. So the way that we do that is we've got two solutions we would deploy in the home. We have a smart thermostat, which would go inside the home. We have a communication module embedded in that thermostat, so the consumer would operate that thermostat just like any thermostat. It's electronic, though. They would have the capability to control that on their cell phone if they choose to, or a web portal. But we've also given the utility the capabilities to communicate to that smart thermostat. So obviously with the consumer's permission, if you hit that peak energy usage where you see your energy costs going up, you could send a signal to that thermostat, let's lower that or raise that temperature in the home on the AC system from 72 to 78 degrees just for an hour, and that'll help your peak demand. The other device we can install is a load control device. This is a load control switch that you would deploy on either an air conditioner or pool pump or water heater. Does much the same in that we have communications built into that. So on those peak times, you can send a signal out to those devices and literally turn off the compressor on an air conditioner. The fan is still run for the consumer, so they would still feel the air blowing, but we would turn off the compressor for a certain period of time. Typically what utilities do is they would shut off somebody's compressor for 15 minutes of an hour and then rotate that amongst customers so their overall peak starts flattening out.
I have a question, not a technical question, but a political question. So I'm a huge supporter of the technology and can't come soon enough, except that idea that since it's two-way communication, the utility or the city or whatever, government, big government can control when what you set the temperature at your house. Rather than voluntary, I save money because I've got this coincident demand charge, and that could be a political issue for many that the government's now going to control how much energy I use.
And you're absolutely right. And as they've offered incentives to consumers, they've come to the consumer and say, all right, for $25 a year or $50 a year, whatever that value is, we will give you an incentive to let us control that air conditioner for a period of 12 hours a summer or whatever that number is. So you would incentivize that customer to allow you to do that.
So it's voluntary, not coercive.
Exactly.
Of course, these are just options. This isn't like something that has to happen. We pick and choose what we want in an AMI system.
Right. These are just some of the additional functionality capabilities that down the road you may need. Well, once you do need those, the system can support them. And we've actually got several utilities, one over Colorado Springs over in Colorado, that's using both these switches and the thermostat on a circuit that's been overloaded. They've seen very significant growth in one part of their city in Colorado Springs. So instead of spending $10 million to upgrade a substation, They've deployed a number of these devices out in the field so they can lower the demand on that particular circuit and thus not have to put out that $10 million infrastructure upgrade for up to 5 years. There's some additional benefits of that, and I'll talk about that here next or in a couple slides. Again, that demand peak generation capital investment. So it's being able to reduce that bulk energy costs of yours. And if you haven't seen the Coincident demand, you will soon. Home Energy Manager is a subset product of that gives the consumer more information. It's a consumer portal and allows them dynamic participation. Most utilities, the way they do that, you would typically call an event, say the day before. You know it's going to be real hot. You know you are going to hit your peak. You want to be able to reduce that. So you would send out the consumers some kind of notification, email, text, whatever. They would actually have the capability to go on to that portal if you choose and say, oh, I'm having a birthday party for 16 relatives. I don't want you touching my air conditioner tomorrow. So the way most utilities do that is they set it up and say, okay, we understand that's going to happen. Twice a summer, you can defer that. You can not get interrupted. So again, it's the best way to do that is have better and more communication with your customer. Let's talk a little bit about data analytics. So the AMI network brings back a lot of information. Today, you may be bringing back 1 meter read a month. We'll now multiply that by dozens of meter readings a day times 31 days a month. You're bringing back a significant amount of information, and that information is important. So many utilities are collecting data on outages, but only 66% of those are actually utilizing that to improve their outage response time. So grid analytics can do a number of things. These are just a few of the modules that are available today. Real-time visualization, so your distribution engineer can actually go out and see at the end of that longest circuit you've got, what's my voltage out on that end meter? Where do I have issues on my distribution network? The grid analytics will actually show that to them visually, perhaps a red dot saying, I've got some voltage excursions or I've got some issues. We can also identify overloaded distribution assets. The city of Burbank in California used our grid analytics to better size their distribution transformer fleet and better recognize which ones are overloaded and which ones are underloaded. So they actually went through our system and with that saw 0 distribution transformer failures over a period of 2 hot summers. That helps optimize your capital investments. They actually use that information to say, this transformer is overloaded, this one's underloaded, let's move those 2. Another analytics package that I didn't put on there, but we're in the development phase of, is for water meter readings. To be able to take water meter information and find out where there's leaks on your system. So being able to bring back very precise information very frequently from a water meter and know where your leaks are and hit those before a consumer gets that huge bill. So the final piece, part of my presentation, really talks about customer empowerment. Today's energy customer is changing. The smart grid gives both new technology and enables technologies to provide the consumers environmental reliability and cost savings. So it gives the utility customer empowerment. So we do that through a couple of different pieces. We have Smart Data Connect, which is a web portal. So that connects to our system for the smart thermostat if you choose. If not, we can just bring that data back and show a customer when they're using their energy. Very easy to go on a website, pulls down that information, and makes it visible. We also have prepayment. Prepayments become a big topic in the utility industry. We like to kind of refer that to budget billing. You know, people on a fixed income would like to be able to just buy power when they think they're going to need it. So you could put them, they could choose to go on a prepayment option where they could pay for their energy as they need it versus once a month getting that big bill. It's tough to swallow an $80 or $100 bill, but yeah, I can throw $10 or $15 on that prepayments every week. Another piece that we're just getting ready to roll out is a consumer engagement portal. So the consumer engagement includes a marketplace, and this gives the consumer points for putting energy efficient light bulbs, for reducing their power during certain peak times. It's a point system that they can utilize on that marketplace to either go buy a smart thermostat, go buy an efficient light bulb, or even go buy a gift card somewhere. So it kind of gives that consumer a way to help entice them to manage their energy usage better. So I want to move on to a couple slides and talk about consumer safety and smart meter facts, because it does come up as you start deploying systems like this. And I really think the top graphic says it all. So a smart meter, 900 megahertz, just under a watt, when you compare that to existing household devices, a baby monitor puts out 7 times more radiated frequency than a smart meter. A cell phone puts 1,000 to 10,000 times more RF radiation than a smart meter. So smart meters are very, very reliable and very safe. A couple of fun pictures of consumers that have actually tried to put tinfoil or other devices around their meter to stop that. In fact, I had to laugh. I was on Amazon.com the other night. There's somebody actually selling these devices on Amazon to put on your meter. So, but you can see how, compared to other devices, I was really surprised when Nintendo, you've got your kids using Nintendo or Wii, and you know, their radio frequencies are very, much higher than a meter. We've also got a number of different agencies that have tested smart meters. The FCC, obviously one. The FCC determines the amount of radiated energy a device can emit. And in the case of smart meters, the FCC has no data or reports to suggest that the exposure is occurring at levels that exceed their guidelines. The California Council on Science and Technology, which was probably one of the most strict bodies that we've seen, has come out and said smart meters emit less RF than the typical household appliance. Again, the RF emissions from smart meters, however, are a fraction of the limit allowed by the FCC. And the one last statistic, we have over 50 million devices deployed in the US today at over 200 utilities. So we have yet to have anybody have any issues with the radiation from a smart meter. So there will be consumers who will say, absolutely not on my home. The way utilities have come back to them and said, oh, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay for your cost of reading that meter. It may be a $10 or $20 surcharge per month to have somebody come out and manually read your meter, but look at all the advantages you can get from a smart meter with that consumer portal, being able to understand how you use energy, being able to understand if I reduce energy, what's that going to do to the environment. So again, MultiPurpose Network, being able to do much more than just reading meters with the different applications on top, whether it's analytics, demand response, consumer engagement, revenue assurance, outage management. Street light control is another area that we're just coming out with. So we're putting these radio devices in a street light and being able to let your utility control some of those street lights with that system as well. So again, meeting smart grid goals of today, whether it's your revenue ops, giving that accurate, timely bills, corporate controls, secure, comprehensive control put of information, customer ops, accurate information to meet the consumer's expectations, giving your distribution operation people more information and more data on their assets, and being able to respond to power quality or outage information. And again, we've got quite a few deployments throughout the U.S., so we've worked with almost every CIS system, outage response system, billing system. So we're used to managing all of those. So with that, I'll open up and see if anybody's got any more questions or. Yes. Oh, you're right. So we didn't cover that. So one of our meters you can buy includes a remote disconnect device actually in the meter base. So you can automate the disconnect of that meter. You can do that for, a lot of people are doing it in student applications where you may have people moving in and out a couple times a year. You can remotely disconnect that device literally from your office. So a consumer can come in, say, I'm done with service, you can disconnect that device on demand. So we have that capability, very safe, very reliable, and many utilities deploy that in 100% of their meters today, just to have that capability.
In addition to that, you would get the final reading at that time, so you could present the final bill
Absolutely.
at the same time.
Yep,
right?
the on-demand read, we have that ability. Like I said, it takes about 10 or 15 seconds to literally get that meter reading right then and there.
I do have, you can contact Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant chose to make all of their meters residential service disconnects. And I have some utilities that I work with right now where there's times I cannot meet with them because they are spending an entire week out in the field disconnecting meters. Shane Ward, who's the superintendent down at Mount Pleasant, told me he figures they save about $250 every time they do a service disconnect. It's not something anybody can just go and type in and say, oh, let's disconnect so-and-so's powers. There's registrations and stuff they have to go through in order to do that. But I'm sure your utility folks here can tell you, usually when it comes close to disconnect, there's lots of things that customers will do to make it difficult for them to do their job. So, thank you.
So just one question as far as cost of implementation. So, and not necessarily the cost to Kaysville right now, but all the different features, is it phased in because of different choices of when you want to bring in those systems, or once you have the system, you have the capacity to just flip them on and there's not necessarily a substantial additional cost to adding a feature, for example, like the control devices or self-control of appliances and things like that in peak periods?
So from a network infrastructure capability, like I mentioned, when we deploy that RF network, we're only utilizing about 12% of its capabilities. So that network, as it would be deployed for just starting with meter reading, has that capability to do all those other things without additional infrastructure.
So is it, without additional infrastructure, hard infrastructure, how about programming costs? Are there any additional costs to like adding features?
So when you add features like a direct load control device, there is a software fee for managing those direct load control devices, yes. So there's application fees as you add that, much like, you know, your cell phone if you buy an app and want to put it on your phone. Distribution automation, that pretty much comes back through your SCADA system, where you really, there's not an application we would sell to you, but it would bring back that information in a DMP format into your distribution automation SCADA system. But yeah, there are other fees as you add more functionality. But the important thing is the investment in that network infrastructure is really a one-time thing.
Right. Thank you.
I'd like to comment, I think, on the basic package that you get. You're going to be able to see your outages in real time. You're going to be able to do service disconnects in real time, and pretty much just have an overview of your system. As I'm not going to mention names, but with other manufacturers and suppliers out there, usually those things will cost you extra. But there are modules. We can price them all out for you. I did want to mention too, with the water portion of it, we do have a module that can attach to some of your existing meters. Some of them, so you wouldn't have to be replacing the entire meter pit on the water. Unfortunately, with the electric meters, they would all have to be brand new. And that's just per FCC. there's no core charge or anything with those. I've had other folks ask me, but the electrical meters would all be new.
And it could be deployed as you choose to deploy it. So you could take those meter book areas and deploy by those books. So you don't have to go do the whole city at once. You can have a phased approach.
Have you ever had incidences where, hacking in these kind of systems, everyone seems to have their worries about that?
Yeah, so we have got some pretty sophisticated security built into our network, so we have yet to have any issues with any security hacking. So we're up on all the new security capabilities and the security appliances. And especially when you go into the distribution automation capabilities, you don't want to have somebody to be able to go and turn off a circuit.
Yeah.
And consumer is important as well.
That's actually an excellent question. I just want to expand on it a little bit. I'm thinking it's not really where it's an RF-based system and it goes into the network. I would think the software would be, at least on the city's side, would be off the net, right? So or is it, do you have to worry about net security on the network?
Yeah, we worry about net security as well. I mean, we, for most utilities of your size, we host most of those. So we have a network operations center in Lenexa, Kansas, that we host, I want to say it's 150 separate customers in our network operations center, and we have all the security capabilities there. We have people come in and test our security routinely.
So I've read a little bit about that just as a layman, the cybersecurity for the current system that we have versus sort of a smart grid system. And I'm thinking, I remember the conclusion, I can't remember why, but actually that the smart grid is more secure from a cybersecurity standpoint than the system we currently have.
And the reason being is you're communicating with those devices several times a day. So when you're not getting information back, you can see that intrusion through the network operations center.
Is there encryption between the meter and the collector?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
They worked, it was with, I want to say it was Homeland Security and Lockheed Martin came together and helped build this system and their encryption. Even if somebody was able to get into it, it would be garbage. It would not make any sense to them whatsoever because of the encryption. So there's dual levels, and it's something that they're always improving to.
And that's not the case with our present network. Right now, just a small radio device and you could read your neighbor's power quantity, so.
And I'd just say, and to reiterate too, after what Ryan was showing there, all of this stuff is going to come into one billing system, and what we have been able to do is automate that process, as Jim was alluding to. Part of the services that you get with Landis & Gear in their system is 40 hours of integration. We do work with Cassell. We do work with ESRI, your GIS system. And if it's not totally seamless for the export, I think they've got it down to like a one button push where the file would be exported if it didn't do it automatically. But that's 99.95% of your daily reads coming in. So that would be doing that.
Six Sigma.
Yeah, not me though.
You anticipated my question, because in Ryan's presentation, he was talking about we've got 4 different softwares, and we're trying to import and export and then re-import. And that's a lot of extra steps in that process. It sounds like this would automate, at least for the power, but it sounds like it's potentially also for the water.
Yeah, so in this system, it could potentially be both water and power. And that's a decision that we need to make together, with the water and the power department. The water department's already moving towards a similar type AMI. Neptune meters are an AMI system. And so independently, they could do all of the things that that Landis and Gear is telling us their system can do. Does that make sense? So in other words, if we continue forward with the Neptune system, then we would not lose anything per se, but we would just have to maintain 2 independent networks.
Well, and it seems that one thing we could clearly do is any new installations, you know, if you made the decision to go ahead with this AMI system, you could, any new installations, you could put the new metering on. It's only what do you do with all the existing meters in the city? And what you're saying is the Neptune systems, you could bridge those over into the AMI system without necessarily having to replace those Neptune water meters.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure of that.
That's something we want to look at. We want to look at the value of having the systems combined or run separately. And that's part of our study as we go through this analysis to determine what's cost effective.
Aren't we in the middle of updating to Neptune right now, though?
Yes.
So we're about halfway through the city or so right now.
We have
with
about
Neptune.
There were 1,600 meters they have installed out of 8,334.
Okay, so not in the middle. We're fractionally.
So we're kind of on hold until we do further study on
And
this.
any meters in inventory could be returned, I'm sure.
I don't think that we want to do that. I think that we should just continue.
If
We have them,
went
we have
away from
them on the
Neptune.
pallets.
Right.
I think we should just continue on the path that we are until we make a decision. Maybe
if we
that's
go away from
counterintuitive, but
Neptune-
that's ultimately your decision, so.
My only concern is if we ultimately get away from Neptune and we continue down the Neptune road, how much money are we spending on meters we're gonna throw away in 3 years? It's,
Well, this presentation wasn't really to say, let's get rid of Neptune. This presentation was just to say, let's move forward with an AMI solution.
I think, sorry, Ryan,
Yeah,
I
go
think what
ahead.
we'd like out of this is allow us to continue to study this and come back to you as a council with a recommendation and a cost-benefit analysis. And once we have that recommendation in place, and then we can decide which options are there for us.
Yeah.
so there's a freeze on Neptune installation right now while we're doing this, right?
We have been, yeah.
Cool, okay.
If I could interject, within the folder that I gave you there is some information on the water modules. And as I said earlier, the bulk of what's on the market now is retrofittable. So for some reason, if you couldn't return the Neptune meters, there is a module that can be, I'm going to say, yeah, the Neptune meter is on the list there. I will double check with them, but most of the meters out in the marketplace, water meters that you may have in the field now, are retrofittable. So you would, if you had a supplier, it happens, they didn't want to return them, it's something you could still use and get value out of. I believe we can just add the water interpreter, and you'd still be able to use that. Might be a little bit more expensive overall, but you'd still get the life out of that meter.
Right on. Cody, did you have a comment? You were laughing down there. Is there something you'd like to say? Okay.
I wanted to follow up on the hosting question. You mentioned you have about 150 of your
Customers, yep.
utilities that you are hosting currently out of Kansas. Is that right? So you have approximately 50 utilities that you're not hosting. Is that right?
Correct.
And I imagine that's a pretty big expense. I deal with hosting with healthcare IT, and so if we do not opt to host, then we would have to have our own servers, our own setup here.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep.
And that gets pricey.
Yeah, we could give you options. We could show
Sure.
you what those costs are. But I will tell you, most utilities under 20,000 connected meters have us host it for them.
I have the hosting costs here that I can go over for you.
We can pass that later.
And I apologize, I have to run. I'm supposed to be on the road for a wedding.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe in the cost analysis.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can
That's
give
when
those
we can
numbers
go over it.
to staff.
Yep. I don't have to run. My flight's not till 9. So if there's any other questions.
I think the question for staff is, are we okay with giving that direction? We're certainly not making a decision tonight to move forward with enhanced metering, rather further explore, as Dean just mentioned, cost benefit, long-term, what we save in labor versus accessibility and ease of reading. And I don't think that we necessarily need unless someone wants to make a motion, but I think we can just give direction to staff to continue with that. What kind of time frame do you anticipate to further study this out and come up with a recommendation or an implementation plan?
We think about 90 days, we'll have a recommendation back to you.
Okay.
Okay. I think it makes a lot of sense from a labor standpoint alone. We can have our existing staff and deploy them to a lot of other functions, a lot of other duties that they may not get to now without having to spend so much time doing all the meter reading.
Well, and also with the issues of the solar panels that are coming up, this will help us in that area, won't it?
That was a question, actually. Thanks for bringing that up. We talked about feed-in tariff versus net metering. Do these smart meters have some kind of function that's far more acceptable to the debate between feed-in versus net metering?
So we absolutely can do net metering. We can do load profile on those devices, so we know exactly when it's giving or receiving power, if you will. So depends upon.
Including times of day, so we can know.
Yep, absolutely. So you,
And that's our big debate about, do we do a feed-in tariff or do we do a net metering, right? Is because the net metering doesn't necessarily currently tell us when it's coming in and out, but this would.
the meters will, absolutely. Yep.
Am I understanding that right, Bruce?
Well, it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with that part of it. The feed-in tariff for the net metering is done, it's not gonna make any difference with that part of it. That's the difference, that's rate structure and how you quantify what you get back, what you're paying for electricity. So it really doesn't have a lot to do with advanced metering and that part of it. But it's capable of doing a lot more than we can do now. Like I say, we change the rate structure to time of use for demand charges.
Okay.
But you do need a smart meter to do net metering.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I
Council?
don't think so, Jim.
Thanks.
Is everybody okay with that direction then, or do you want
Yes,
to, any objections?
absolutely. No, I think that's great direction.
All right, thank you for that review and presentation. Our regular city council meeting will convene at 7 p.m. So I'd welcome a motion to adjourn this special city council meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second the motion?
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Lena, second by Councilmember Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll reconvene at 7 p.m.